Hi, here we've got our third installment of the Village Market Simulator series, where we talk about how economies fail in different ways, especially around the issuance and lack of currency and their dependence on external markets. So today we've got a simulation of about 200 businesses. They're local goods and service providers, and there's no external market to start with. And we're going to visualize the trade between these businesses. So you can see in yellow here, this is trade going on. And in the background we have a heat map showing, how much trade there is and where the hot spots are of trade, like the market locations. And everyone in this economy is, as we've kind of shown in the previous simulations, they're pretty stable, the inequality levels aren't very high. And what we're going to add this time is an external market, where importers come in. So importers start buying things from some external market, let's say China, or let's say the next big city like Mombasa or Nairobi, and they bring stuff back to sell in that local market. There's going to be two different kinds of them. There'll be a yellow one and a red one. The red ones don't even live there locally, so they don't spend any money locally. They just bring all their money back out of the community. And as they do so, they pull more and more currency out of the community. So up on the top we can see the amount of trade in the community as a graph in red, and then another red graph below it is the amount of currency in circulation. And you can see that those two are very, very coupled. So as there's less currency in circulation, there's less and less trade going on. And that's true in very poor communities, especially because there's no buffer system. So a few importers in Belgium or in New York aren't going to change the amount of trade going on, but in Kenya, for instance, importers actually have a huge way to shift the economy. And as they do so, more and more of these local goods and service providers are turning blue here, which means that they can no longer get enough money from the local markets to stay in business. And so what they do is they start offering their services to that external market. So they start exporting their labor or their goods and services. And so what you can see here is the introduction of importers causes this push for exporters to balance out. So if there's no exports, then there's no money coming into the community. And if there's no money coming into the community, eventually no one can buy anything. And so the importers essentially force the community into this export-import mode. And so as this goes on and on, eventually there's some stability between the two. I mean, trade has dropped a lot and the amount of currency has dropped a lot, but still there's a bit of a balance. So as there's less and less money, more and more people become exporters. The amount of trade is shifted closer to the external market, which is the orange spot there on the top right. And this is kind of life as usual, except we haven't added one important thing, which is that these external markets are very seasonal. So we're going to add that seasonality here. So if you see in this external market conditions, these blue line here, this is sort of the roller coaster of imports and exports that happens throughout the year. So there's more trade going on in November, December, and then things crash in January, February. This is the typical cycle across Africa and across most of the world. There's this sort of heartbeat pattern to these external markets. And so as that happens, you can see in January there's a lot more money kind of being pumped into the system. So the national currency is actually rising up a bit, which is great because there's more and more trade. You can see things are a little bit more lively. And then in January you can see a collapse. And so this collapse is very, 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 very common across Africa, where communities really just kind of stop, the markets stop. A lot of people end up leaving during this period to go back to their homesteads, and then there's very, very, very little business. And I mean, this happens on a yearly cycle. There's also monthly cycles and even weekly cycles, depending on how salaries are coming into those communities. So if we just kind of let that play over time, we can see it coming back to life again sometime in March. And this kind of stop and go pattern is how communities are in Kenya, and it creates this very brittle, non-resilient market. So if anything happens in this market, there's not enough money to sustain it, when the external market stops. And so there's been created here a complete dependency now on this foreign market. So if we just let that play for a little while, you can just see again another yearly cycle. Things start to do a little bit better in December, and again they crash in January. So this next January, what we're going to do is something a little bit different. As we've done in the other simulations, we add a secondary currency. So that secondary currency can be seen in a few ways. In one way is you can see the current national currency that we've got here could be something like the euro, and how countries who become dependent on the euro, let's say Greece, without a huge amount of local production, can get kind of pulled into that external market in a very negative way. Yet countries who maintain their own national currency, let's say Switzerland has the Swiss franc, they maintain this sort of buffer system. So we want to add a buffer system to this community. And so sometime in January, February, we're going to add a secondary currency, and you can see it here in green being traded, and the rules for this are that it's a zero interest credit that all the businesses in the community have access to, and they use it to top up trade. So they're still using national currency in their trading, but that lacking national currency they can top up with a local currency. And this is essentially the system we use here in Kenya with grassroots economics, called Sarafu-Credit. And so what you can see pretty immediately here is even though the national currency is not changing, it's still doing this sort of seasonal pattern, the amount of trade starts to jump up, both in national currency and in the local currency. And the local currency here is creating this sort of counter-cyclic effect, so when people have less national currency, they use more of the community currency. So you can see the market in this case now, it's still reacting, there's still importers and exporters, yet there's still this, there's a buffer system, there's a little bit of resilience now in this market, and that's what we're trying to create with these local currency systems, which is what countries like Switzerland have automatically, because they have an import-export currency in the sense of the euro, they have a national currency, the Swiss franc, and then they also have local currencies even below that. So there's the weir credit, and then there's also even cells, which provide buffer systems at different levels for this kind of behavior. So we still see in the simulation here that in January there is a dearth of national currency, just like there was in the past. So there's still import and export markets, but there's something to counteract that, and that's what we're trying to say here is that and show is that there's a way that a community can create its own source of trade and its own source of currency, so that it can weather these market conditions. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned and visit grassrootseconomics.org for information about these types of programs here in Kenya. Hiya.